Hello, everyone, and good evening. My name's Don Arleth, and welcome to our main edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. Tonight, we'll be taking a close look at the pivotal general elections in Georgia over the weekend. Some say this is the final call for Georgia to choose an alliance with the European Union over Russia. We'll also be looking into Germany's Ukraine policy as well. That's still ahead, but first up, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Ukraine cannot join NATO while at war, says German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk is accused of being in regular contact with Vladimir Putin. And Rainbow Friday in Polish schools in support of LGBTQ+ students. No to NATO, and immediate admission of Ukraine to NATO is out of the question for Berlin. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz definitively rejected Volodymyr Zelensky's request, which was part of the Ukrainian president's recently unveiled victory plan. Marek Steele reports.
What is everyday life for Ukrainian soldiers is the largest obstacle for Kyiv in its path to NATO membership. In an interview for German TV ZDF, Chancellor Scholz rejected the idea of inviting Ukraine to NATO.
A country that is at war cannot be a NATO member. Everyone knows that. There is no disagreement about this. And with NATO, the invitation is usually linked to membership pretty quickly. This is a process that is not currently pending.
The topic was discussed between Scholz and Slovak President Peter Pellegrini, who visited Berlin on Thursday. Slovak media reported the two had agreed that Ukraine's accession to NATO is not on the table.
They are in a minority, those that are using this excuse that war is going on, and so Ukraine can't be allowed into NATO. This is, as always with Germany, an excuse. There were excuses when the Minsk process was on, not to irritate, not to annoy Russia. And there were excuses over Nord Stream 2. Oh, this is so important. It's economics, it's not politics.
Although Berlin has been repeatedly accused of dragging its feet when it comes to supporting Ukraine, Germany remains its second largest aid donor. Financial, military, and humanitarian assistance that the Germans have provided to Kyiv amount to roughly 15 billion euros.
My dear friends, if the door is open, let us in. If the door is closed, say it publicly with the explanation why. I want to remind also to the Chancellor that this is the cheapest way to stop the war. We need to win the battle on Ukraine, not on the Polish or German territory.
Kyiv's demand to be immediately invited into NATO was part of Zelensky's 5-point victory plan, which he presented to his allies last week.
In a sense, it's a wish list that Ukraine is offering. But, wish lists are one thing, realities are another thing. And I think he wants to see what the feedback will be. What indeed will Washington, Berlin, Paris, London, Warsaw, and others say.
The victory plan did not gain traction among allied leaders, although NATO's recently confirmed official position is that Ukraine's membership is only a question of time.
Ukraine will be a member of NATO in the future. That is what we decided in Washington.
But with strong opposition to the idea from several NATO members, Ukraine's accession seems to be moving further away.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has refused to host Antonio Guterres following the UN Secretary General's meeting with Vladimir Putin on the sidelines of the BRICS summit. The headline reported by AFP, citing sources in the Ukrainian government, comes amidst a wave of backlash the UN official is facing following his controversial visit to Kazan, Russia. A coalition of Ukrainian NGOs has called on the International Criminal Court to comment on the meeting. Just by talking to Putin and shaking his hand, Guterres broke his organization's own rules. Vladimir Putin is wanted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes committed in Ukraine. Prior to Guterres' meeting with the Russian president, the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry also condemned the UN chief's participation in the BRICS summit. In his defense, Antonio Guterres, spokesperson, said that his boss's intention was to reiterate that the Russian invasion of Ukraine is a violation of international law. The EU still has plenty of room for more members. 6 nations of the Western Balkans are hoping to join the 27-member bloc. This week, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen is visiting all of them to move their accession talks forward. Krzysztof Panek reports.
Albania, North Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo and Montenegro. These Balkan states, all of which applied for membership in the European Union, are being visited by Ursula von der Leyen. Topping the European Commission President's agenda is the €6 billion growth plan for the Western Balkans. On Friday, von der Leyen spoke with the leaders of Serbia as well as Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Bosnia and Herzegovina has come a long way, but with hard work, with a lot of dedication and determination, you now have achieved candidate status. It really makes a difference. And the member states have decided now to open accession negotiations in March. I think this was a historic moment when we witnessed that.
While all 6 countries have European ambitions, their path to membership has been unusually long, with no clear end in sight.
They are behind the schedule that we know. If we look at Croatia, that was negotiating less than 6 years, and we have Montenegro that is most advanced in the talks with the EU, and it is negotiating already over 12 years. Now it is easy to say that it is behind the schedule. I'm not going country by country, but this lack of or the slow pace of the enlargement is very important.
Each of the 6 nations has to grapple with its own unique problems. Serbia's close ties with Russia raise concern among Western countries. Bosnia and Herzegovina's European aspirations are hampered by internal ethnic conflict between Croats, Bosniaks and Serbs.
During this visit, we discussed all of our obligations on the EU path. I informed President von der Leyen that in the past, we had difficulties in terms of the functioning of the institutions and decision-making due to pre-campaign and the official election campaign itself, as well as local elections.
Having already visited Albania and North Macedonia, von der Leyen will travel to Kosovo and Montenegro on Saturday. While progress is being made, the path to European Union membership for the Western Balkans seems to still be far in the distance.
Now to the Caucasus. Will Georgia move closer towards EU membership, or will it align itself with Moscow? Tomorrow, Georgians will head to the polls for pivotal parliamentary elections, which will answer that question. Our correspondent Ovidiusz Nicea is in the Georgian capital of Tbilisi. Hello, Ovidiusz. So can you please tell us who exactly is running in these elections and what is at stake?
Well, Don, like you said, tomorrow will be a pivotal election. And the 2 main contenders tomorrow are the ruling party, the Georgian Dream, and on the other hand, 4 pro-European coalitions. The Georgian Dream has been in power for the past 12 years, and although it features the European flag in its poster and its campaign posters, the critics have said that this party has only drawn Georgia further away from the European Union, especially after the introduction of the Foreign Agents Bill, which not only drew hundreds of thousands of people to protest on the streets, but also prompted the EU to halt Georgia's accession process. On the other hand, there are these 4 pro-Western coalitions, which, if they win, they promise to form a coalition and introduce a series of measures, a series of reforms that will bring European Union closer to Georgia. And in a country where 80% of people are in favor of joining the EU, some observers say that in order to cling on to power, the Georgian Dream has used some unfair tactics.
There have been several reports even published today that there has been the use of administrative resources by the Georgian Dream government. Even recently, Tabula was the one to break the news about how kindergarten teachers are being threatened to join the rally, for the pro-government rally that was held 2 days ago. So, I mean, you also see that there are cases where they are asking for ID scans and pictures. There is also cases of direct vote buying.
The feeling here on the streets is that tomorrow will be a very important elections, the most important in many years and perhaps the most important in the history of independent Georgia. And we tapped to some of these sentiments here on the streets of the Georgian capital, Tbilisi, because the pro-European coalitions have campaigned saying that this is a choice between the EU and Russia. The Georgian Dream has campaigned on a platform saying that this is a choice between war and peace. So plenty of electorate is really mobilized for tomorrow's vote. And take a listen to what people have told us here in Tbilisi.
This is one of the main things that all of us should do and consider the right decision. Because it's just a matter of existence of this country. I'm the one who was born in Soviet Union, so I would never wish to go back and never wish this fate to my children and grandchildren. This is the main thing.
Tomorrow's elections are one of the important in the modern history of Georgia. First of all, I have to say it's my first elections, and I feel my responsibility towards my country to show my position, which way our country should evolve. And I go to elections to prove my point. I will mark the party I think will take Georgia to the right place and which offers the best way of development of our country and our youngsters, most importantly for myself.
We must understand also our geopolitical context, and that's why I sure advise our every citizen who live in Georgia, and it doesn't matter. For example, if you live in another country, maybe it is pretty important to participate in election because it depends on us in which kind of city or which kind of country we will live. And sure, yeah, it is pretty important for us, for me, for example.
Here in the Georgian capital, you can see hundreds of posters, banners advertising the ruling party, the Georgian Dream. There are very few ones advertising the opposition. But despite this, some say that actually tomorrow there is a chance, the biggest one in many, many years, that the Georgian Dream can actually lose. Take a listen to what independent journalist from media outlet Tabula said to us earlier today.
The opposition has been very weak, so if hopefully the Georgian Dream government loses, it's going to be because of their mistakes and not because of the successes of the opposition.
So tomorrow seems like it will be an eventful day. What's new tomorrow is that 90%, some 90% of the ballots will be cast electronically. This is for the first time in Georgia's history. And in general, it seems like it will be a very eventful day and perhaps very eventful days to come because regardless of the results of the election, experts predict that protests are inevitable on the streets of Georgia.
All right, Ovidiusz Nicea reporting there from Tbilisi. Thank you very much for that. It certainly will be an interesting day tomorrow. Now, the U.S. presidential elections are just around the corner, and some of the world's most powerful people are showing public support for their preferred candidates. Elon Musk is the biggest name backing Donald Trump, who, according to a Wall Street Journal report, has some inconvenient ties to the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin. Franciszek Pilis reports.
Where is he? Come on up here, Elon.
It's no surprise that a man like Elon Musk has an interest in U.S. politics.
President Trump must win to preserve the Constitution. He must win to preserve democracy in America.
Musk has become an almost invaluable asset to the U.S. military and NASA through the access to space rockets and the Starlink internet service produced by his company, SpaceX. Some, however, say his endorsement of Donald Trump might come with some Russian baggage. The Wall Street Journal, citing sources in the White House, claims that the billionaire businessman has been in secret contact with Vladimir Putin, alongside a swath of other high-ranking Russian officials since 2022. If these rumors are confirmed, they could prove to be troublesome for Washington.
His involvement with SpaceX, highly sensitive satellites that are put up by the U.S. military. He has some knowledge of that. He does have a top secret clearance, so he's privy to some of that information, not all of it. And so certainly the government needs to make sure it understands what these communications are, if they're occurring, and whether or not any kind of classified information is being shared.
The newspaper goes on to claim that public and private pressures from the Kremlin, bearing on personal threats, were behind Musk's decision to stop funding and supporting the Starlink satellites he provided for free to Ukraine following Russia's invasion. The report also accuses Musk of stalling the activation of Starlink satellites in Taiwan, supporting an idea of Putin's meant as a favor to China's Xi Jinping. So far, Elon Musk has not responded to the allegations made in the report or answered the Wall Street Journal's request for comment. He has, however, addressed the Ukrainian Starlink controversy before, citing US sanctions imposed on Russia as the reason the internet service could not be turned on over Crimea. He also called for Starlink to be used for civilian activities and not military purposes. As the Wall Street Journal's claims have spread online, some analysts say Russia could be looking to interfere with the US elections through Elon Musk's endorsement of Donald Trump and through his social media platform, X.
They're not so much interested in picking a winner because they know they can't determine that, but they are interested in causing discord and causing divide, and they're very good at doing that. We saw that in 2016 where they kind of played both sides of the street. I suspect that they're doing the same as well.
Given Moscow's attempt at fiddling with the US elections back in 2016, as confirmed by the FBI, who have since arrested 12 Russian military intelligence officers, who's to say that the Kremlin wouldn't try again this time?
After 2 decades of preparation, the Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw is finally opening its doors to the public. This momentous occasion represents the culmination of years of hard work, creating a vibrant space where contemporary art can be celebrated and explored anew. Our Carolina Chaplin is at the museum. Good evening, Carolina. So what do the festivities look like tonight at the new Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw?
Well done. The atmosphere is clearly exciting. Right behind me, you can see a parade of Warsaw finest, and that is just one of many, in fact over 100 events that will mark the opening of Warsaw New Cultural Institution. There will be tonight a concert by New York artist King Gordon, and inside there are only 8 works of art. Some say that the museum is quite sparse for the first night. However, the museum curator and director Joanna Myskowska says that's deliberate because all eyes are on the beauty of the building. Designed by the New York architect Tom Pfeiffer, it is light, it's modern, and it, as he said, magical. For more on that, let's take a look at our report.
The opening of the Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw is one of the city's biggest cultural events of the year. The idea of creating the museum traces back to 2005, but the project took over a decade to finish.
For me, the most beautiful will be when the public, our visitors, can finally come here and enjoy this building. For the long time, it was just a dream, just a fantasy.
The building has nearly 20,000 square meters of floor space across 4 above-ground and 2 underground levels. It includes exhibition spaces totaling over 4,500 square meters, educational rooms, an art conservation workshop, and storage space for artworks. Additionally, the museum has a cinema with 150 seats. The overall design is the work of an architect, Thomas Pfeiffer.
It took a year and a half to get up to the ground level because there are subways that are running underneath here, active subway lines. Those subway lines were built in 1955, 1954, and nobody really knew exactly what was down there, so they had to dig around the subways to figure out where the columns would go.
For 3 weeks, from October 25th to November 10th, the Museum of Modern Art will host over 100 events. The program will include exhibitions, concerts, performances, and workshops aimed at attracting both locals and tourists. During the opening, several large-scale sculptures and installations by Polish and international artists were showcased, including works by Magdalena Bakanowicz, Alina Szapocznikow, Sandra Mujinga, and Cecilia Vicuña. The opening of the Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw is undoubtedly one of the most significant cultural events of the year.
Warsaw has had a very vibrant, incredible artist community for some time. I think what is wonderful to see is that it seems like one of perhaps the first museum specifically building designed for art in a very long time. And so I think it signifies definitely a new center for the arts in Eastern Europe.
With a rich program of exhibitions, concerts, performances, and workshops, the new venue has the potential to become a key feature in Europe's artistic landscape.
An initiative aimed at promoting diversity and acceptance among students known as Rainbow Friday took place today in many schools across Poland. This year, for the first time, the Mazovian Board of Education is supporting the event, which has been organized since 2016. Jeremy Hołodniuk has this next report.
Over 120 schools in Poland have participated in Rainbow Friday, an event poised to help spread awareness of LGBT+ community.
We are celebrating equality, safety, and freedom of queer youth to express themselves as well as they can in the circumstances that they have.
Growspace, one of the organizers, provided schools with special educational packages, stickers and posters to enhance the day's activities. One of the schools involved was this high school in Warsaw. TVP World asked the teachers and students why events like this are important.
What is most important to us is that it's not only fun, entertaining and celebratory, but that it carries an educational value. We would like to teach our youth something.
This perspective was shared by some of the students who took part in the event.
It was a very eye-opening experience, especially that some of us aren't met on a daily basis with the gay community.
Some voices, however, question the legality of this event, namely the Ordo Iuris Foundation, known for its conservative stance.
It should be noted that activities in schools organized by external organizations must be preceded by a positive opinion from the Parents' Council, as required by educational law.
Rainbow Friday, however, takes place continuously since 2016 on the last Friday of October each year, reinforcing the message of tolerance in Polish schools.
The first and main point of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's victory plan was flat out rejected by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. That is, the invitation to join NATO. Ever since the full-scale invasion by Russia of Ukraine, Germany has been one of the hardest countries to convince in Europe to do more to help Kyiv. Even German intelligence suggests that direct conflict between Russia and NATO is just a few years away. And now joining me here to discuss is Daniela Schwarzer, Professor of European Studies at Oxford University. Hello, good evening, and thank you for joining us on World News Tonight.
Good evening. May I just correct, I'm a professor of political science in Berlin and I work for the Bertelsmann Foundation.
Okay, well, that's a great note from my producer. Sorry about the mistake. Starting with Chancellor Olaf Scholz and his refusal, he says it's obvious to everybody that, of course, nobody considers that Ukraine would ever be invited to join NATO. But at the same time, I think there's some expectation of some type of peace talks with Russia. Should Olaf Scholz come out and flat out say, no, not at this time, we're not thinking that Ukraine can possibly be a NATO member?
So the German position has, as you said, been very hesitant with regards to offering NATO membership, just like the American position. And from an analytical perspective, we see a pattern. Germany has moved on the most difficult decisions when it was completely in sync with Washington. This also concerns arms deliveries like the tanks that the Chancellor hesitated on for a long time. And right now, for NATO, there is very clear hesitation. In my view, it has to do also with the upcoming US elections. And on the German side, there is a concern among government officials and policymakers that offering NATO membership would mean an escalation of the war. And that has guided much of Germany's policy decisions in its support for Ukraine. But I do wish to say that among Europeans, if you look at the support extended to Ukraine, Germany is by far the largest supporter in absolute terms. So by far more than France or, for instance, also the UK. And so I think we see a story here which is not one of reluctance, it is one of caution, but also in terms of military support and financial support, Germany has done a lot and is, of course, debating, as we speak. Of course, all eyes are on the US and the question, what happens if Donald Trump gets elected and reduces support to Ukraine? And my sense is, talking to many people in Berlin, that there is a real feeling of responsibility that European support to Ukraine has to continue.
What about the feeling that European security could be in danger even more if it is reluctant to support Ukraine? Just referring to the German intelligence report that we could have a direct confrontation with Russia, between Russia and NATO, in just a few years' time. Wouldn't it be in our best interest right now to, say, spend 1% of GDP to stave off a war that could end up costing us 10 or 20% or 30% of GDP if a large-scale conflict breaks out?
I personally share the analysis that it is important to support Ukraine strongly because any, let's say, bad deal over Ukraine, let's take the scenario that Donald Trump gets into office, talks to Vladimir Putin and tries to strike some kind of deal, would be an undermining of European security. So it is extremely important to support Ukraine. And it's also true that we only have a limited amount of time, because it is well known that Russia puts everything it can into its defense or war economy and tries to build capacities to wage war. And so I think we are under enormous time pressure, and the Europeans need to prepare for a situation to sustain the support efforts for Ukraine, even in a situation where American support should break away. And this is not only a Trump scenario. I think we have to be very realistic also in the case of Harris being elected US president, who is a supporter of Ukraine. It may be more difficult than under Joe Biden to get support packages through Congress. And that is why Europeans need to think very hard, both on the question of short-term support to Ukraine, meaning sustaining the war effort, but also what it takes for Europeans to build a European security order with less American engagement, because American attention is shifting towards Asia. And this will happen whoever is US president. And so Europeans need to take more responsibility for their own security in any case. And supporting Ukraine at the moment is of highest priority.
Is it possible that Germany would choose a different direction if someone like Friedrich Merz would come into power as potentially the next German chancellor? Is it just political talk that he's throwing out the possibility of giving tourists to Ukraine, or is this domestic politics, I guess, at work? I guess that's my question.
So he is the candidate of the Christian Democrats, and the party, and he as their chairman, have been very consistent over the past 2.5 years in saying Ukraine needs support. And several times, actually, their position was ahead of what the government then did. So discussing Taurus, I think, is in particular, because you asked about the domestic signaling that comes from that. I don't think this is an issue which is just used to do something domestically, because the German public is not very keen, on discussing more weapons for Ukraine. They support it, but it's not an issue with which you can win extra votes. So I do believe he is showing a direction, if he were chancellor, where Germany would go in terms of foreign policy and security and defense policy. And mentioning Taurus, of course, signals that if he were in office, he would probably deliver certain arms more quickly to Ukraine in the understanding that those weapons are needed to not lose more territory to Russia and to improve the situation of Ukraine.
Okay. Daniela Schwarze, thank you very much for joining me on the program tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you for joining us, and stay with us because On the Record with Assam Yasser is coming up next. So keep it here on TVP World.